Today, I'm really happy and grateful to welcome my friend Laura Beddoe to join me on the Vulnerability Rocks podcast. Laura is my friend from back in Brighton, and I wanted to bring Laura on because I wanted to invite her to talk about her experience and what has led her to do the work that she's called to do today. Laura is a spiritual hypnotherapist and a women's life coach, and she is specialising in pre and postnatal care for women. And part of her story, obviously with everyone's story there's lots to it, but the part that we're going to talk about mostly today is her journey to secondary motherhood, right? Because she was already a mother to her son Riley, but she is with her fiance and they have been on a journey to have their new little baby girl, and it very sadly entails loss and pregnancy loss and baby loss. And Laura was actually booked to come on this podcast before what happened to me in the last 2 weeks, but I wanted to go ahead and do this recording with her today because it's current, it's real, it happens to people, and I just feel like actually we should do this conversation. So listeners, bear with us because it's really personal and it's really painful, and it's affected both of us today on this call, but I know that I can trust and hold this space with Laura to discuss this, and hopefully it will help some other women and other men who are supporting their women and also experiencing that loss themselves. So Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me on. And as Emma said, we did organise this when Emma was pregnant, and we were going to be talking about pregnancy loss, and I was concerned when I had it in my diary for Emma to be talking about this when it is so raw. And before we started this conversation today, before we started recording, I did say to Emma, if she wants to stop this at any time, then she should do that, because pregnancy loss is a roller coaster ride, after a roller coaster of emotions. And yeah, you just need to, and the way that Emma is dealing with this is just so, she's honouring herself, she's honouring her body, and she's listening to what it needs. And right now she feels like it needs to be helping other women, and that's helping her to process. So I am so in awe of your courage, and I'm sure that so many women will be as well, watching this. And I hope that this will help other women that are processing this horrible thing that happens to so many women.
Yeah.
And up until I think the last few years, it hasn't really been spoken about nearly as much as what it should be. It's been one of those things that, shh, don't talk about that. But yeah, we'll dive deeper, I think, as the interview goes on.
First of all, thank you for, like, it's really weird because normally these podcasts are me holding space for someone else. I feel like we're both going to be holding each other through this. So yes. Thank you, and I'm grateful. It's good. This interview could switch, guys, but no, it won't. But I think it's an equal, respectful space. So thank you. I would like you to start with the beginning of your kind of journey to secondary motherhood, because I'm really interested to know when for you, because everyone realizes at different times that their journey to parenthood, first time, second time, or third time, all of a sudden we come up against problems, loss, fertility issues. It's different for every person. So I'd love to hear from you how your journey went, and when was that first moment of, oh, this is hard, because my moment is different to yours, but I remember like, oh, You know, we spend so long getting told, don't get pregnant, whatever you do. That was my sex education, you know, that's as far as it went. Don't get pregnant. And but no one really educates you on the other side of this. And guess what? This isn't going to be easy, and it's going to be hard and tough and gut wrenching and all of that. So I'd just love to hear your experience and your journey, really.
Well, it's interesting that you said that your piece of advice was don't get pregnant, because clearly that was not my advice. I had a baby at 18 years old. So my son Riley, no problems whatsoever. I was actually on the pill and fell pregnant with my son Riley. So yeah, so I just thought that that would always be my experience. And I had him very young, and I pretty much brought him up on my own and went through traumatic relationships. And then I met my fiance now, Nick, who is absolutely my soulmate. And you know, I truly believe, like, my work is all around universal laws and honouring our bodies. And I believe that the universe brought me to Nick. And he is 10 years older than me. And we didn't start trying for a baby. It was actually the story around us wanting to have a baby was purely by accident. We were really happy in our relationship. We'd moved in together, and we were at a place where you, like a flying experience, and I hit my eye. And I don't normally go to the doctors for things, really. I'm the sort of person, I sort of pull my socks up and get on with things. And well, that's how I used to be. I didn't really listen to my body. I used to be the sort of person, I'll be all right. I'll be all right. Anyway, so I ended up having to go, and I had an eye laceration. I had to go to the doctors. And whilst I was at the doctors, I was having these extreme pain down below. And I just mentioned it whilst I was at the doctor's. I was like, whilst I'm here, I've been having some really bad cramps, and just wondering if you think that I should have a checkup on that. And she's like, you're not pregnant, are you? And I was like, no, I'm not pregnant. I've had a period. And she was like, I think you should probably do a pregnancy test. So I went home. So they don't give you them on the NHS in England anymore. I had to go and buy one, and I went home. Anyway, I was sitting on the toilet and looked at it, and I nearly fell off the toilet seat because it said I was pregnant. And I was quite relieved and happy inside. I thought, oh my God, we're having a baby. Like you do. That's the natural reaction. Then after that, about 10-20 minutes after that, the pain started again, really painful. And I thought, this is not good. This is really not good. So I rang the doctor back and I explained what was happening. She said, you better come back. They asked me to do another test in the toilet, and I nearly collapsed. And luckily, I was at the doctor's at that time, because I rushed up to the hospital. They did an examination on me at the time, and I think that's when my fallopian tube actually erupted while she was doing the examination. They told me, basically, I did not know either that before, so I'd never heard of a ectopic pregnancy. Basically, an ectopic pregnancy is where the baby is trapped in the fallopian tube. And all I kept saying to the nurses, I just want to save the baby. I just want to save the baby. Didn't know that there's no way that they can save the baby, which is, of course, so sad. And anyway, so she said, if you can walk to have a scan, then we'll scan you. I got up and collapsed. I don't remember anything after that. and woke up in a hospital bed, very disorientated. And I remember just the nurse saying, "You've asked us that so many times now." I'd still feel tearful when I think about it now. They said that we couldn't save the baby. Just even thinking about that, even now that tears me up. And it's because I was so disorientated coming round. And sorry, I just got to take a breath. I didn't realise I was going to get sad. I've done so much work on it, but it's okay because it is sad.
What happened to you was there was no time for you to process anything, and it makes sense to me that it would still affect you now.
Yeah, it was traumatic because I nearly died.
Yeah.
They said if you wasn't in the hospital when that happened, you would have died.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's funny. I couldn't talk about it for a lot. This is actually the first time I've ever talked about it. Talked about it in a space like this. I think I'm ready to, but yeah, it's the first time I've ever. And you know what? I've turned it into gold. I'm going to help so many women with this and move forwards and their trauma and that PTSD. And there still must be a little bit there for me. So I'm going to go and look at that now because it's still a little bit there, you know. So as I came round, I felt so sad and so low. And I was told I had one fallopian tube removed. So I had keyhole surgery. And yeah, they removed one fallopian tube. So for me, I'm 34 years old now. That happened at 32. So for a while after that, I felt I really wanted a baby. It made me realise how much I wanted a baby. And my partner, it made him realise how much he wanted a baby as well. And yeah, I obviously had the worries and concerns that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant easily now because I had one fallopian tube, which is after you lose a baby as well, it's so normal and natural. This is not something I want to stress to women if you're watching this, to not want to have sex after that experience because it's, you know, you feel bloated, sore, all of those things, but you also want a baby. So it's like a weird paradox.
Yeah.
And also once you get past the pain of what has happened, you're grieving something that, you know, that something that you would have liked, even though I hadn't planned it. It's a very strange time and very up and down that time, even though I hadn't planned it. I hadn't planned any of it. I just knew that now we wanted a baby and maybe it wasn't possible. Yeah. But it is possible, clearly, because I have a little girl. And yeah, I remember going through a stage after that. Every time I had a period, I would just have a breakdown and feel awful, just awful. And I believe that I've been told this by some treatments that I've had, that the baby that was there, the soul, was still there and wasn't leaving at that time. So it was like a phantom pregnancy almost. So I believe that for me, that's what was happening. Anyway, I'm a true believer that everything happens for a reason. And I believe that happened to me to make me connect to my body, to make me start to tune into myself. Because before that, I didn't look at my cycles. I didn't honour myself. If I felt ill, I would be like, no, I need to carry on, and have a very masculine outlook on how I would do things. So I believe that happened to me for that reason. So 4 months later, I ended up leaving my job. I was working in a corporate place with somebody that wasn't very nice to me, and it was a woman, treated me quite badly after that experience. Actually said to me 2 weeks after I'd got in that, why are my figures failing? Just like, I nearly died. That's why. And then that triggered me to go for my dreams and set up the healing rooms. So that's what came out of that. So I left my old corporate job, and after I left and handed in my resignation, I found out that I was pregnant again.
So I'm interested to know how you felt having had that experience, and then to find out you were pregnant again after every month. And I know that feeling. Every month the period comes and you're devastated. That has been my year, the last year. So I know that feeling, and it's just, I can't even find the right word for it, but it's devastating every month. So then to find out you were then pregnant, how did you feel in that moment?
Scared. Very scared in that moment, but excited and happy and ecstatic and everything. It was amazing. And I actually put in an envelope. I surprised Nick. He came home, and I'd put in an envelope the pregnancy test with a little note saying you're going to be a dad. And yeah, it was just amazing. But I was so frightened the whole time.
Yeah.
Every appointment I went to. So because I'd had an ectopic pregnancy, I had to have a 6-week scan.
Yeah.
And there was a heartbeat, a little fluttering heartbeat on that monitor. And so I just thought, everything's going to be fine. This is going to be fine. Still a little bit frightened inside the whole time, but I started to tell people, I got excited about it. And yeah, I felt pregnant. I felt I had all of the symptoms that you get, you know, the nausea, the cravings, everything. And the scan for my 12 weeks, I remember it well. I even thought it was a sign 10:10. The time was 10:10 that the appointment was at. I thought that's a sign from the universe. It's synchronicity. This is going to be fine. And we went to that appointment. I actually took my son because it was his birthday that day, his 15th birthday. And I said, you know, this is going to be a present for you to see your brother or sister. And we all sat down, and she said to me, how many weeks are you supposed to be? I thought at the time that she was going to say, you're further along. She said, I am so sorry. The baby hasn't got a heartbeat. Yeah. And I'm okay, actually. This shows you that hypnotherapy really does work, because now I can talk about that experience and the emotion is being removed. I've done a lot of work around that pregnancy. I haven't on the first one, so that just shows that I do need to go away and do a little bit of work on that. But this is good because it's shown me that there is still some emotion, and not that that's a bad thing, but there's still some PTSD around that for me to have reacted the way that I did. And crying is okay. Like, I've seen that you posted that you have literally sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, and I did. I sobbed. It was a really, really sad time again. But because I knew that feeling of how I felt on that day, I was so thrown. I couldn't believe it. I felt like saying to her, "Are you joking?"
Yeah.
I had all of the symptoms. I had that belly, and I just could not believe it. And my son was there.
So what you've experienced the second time then was a miscarriage.
Yes. So my body was doing everything that it should be doing to carry a baby. And that my body thought that the baby was fine. So no bleeding, no anything, no sign of a miscarriage. And in my mind, I kept thinking, this isn't a miscarriage. I could not get my head around that. My body hasn't shown me any blood. Why is this classed as a miscarriage? And I went to have the operation. I couldn't take the tablet. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I just couldn't sit and wait. I just could not do that. And just even going down to theatre, one of the guys that was there obviously didn't read my notes, and he was like, "What's the matter with you, love?" And then he read my notes and he was like, "I'm so sorry."
You know what? That's one of the things that I've found the hardest is it is dealing with people saying the wrong thing in that, especially in that time when you're like, for me, between the baby being diagnosed and having to have that termination for medical reasons at 13 and a half weeks, knowing that the baby's heartbeat was still beating, it was just so difficult. And I live in Dubai and we had to fly back to the UK. I didn't have any clothes that were warm enough to come back to the UK in November. So I had to go to the shops and buy maternity jeans to fly back and have a termination for medical reasons. So as I'm in the shop, I've got people congratulating me that I'm pregnant because I'm buying maternity jeans. I'm like 12 and a half weeks by this point. And it's hard. And I was at the airport and I was visibly looking pregnant, people offering me a seat because I'm a pregnant woman, and I didn't take the seat because I felt like a fraud. But I was still pregnant and my baby's heartbeat was still beating and my hips were killing me and I still felt sick and the smell of meat was turning my stomach. And it's a really, really mad headspace to be in.
I can remember as well just crying and crying and crying to Nick, saying, "I feel like an idiot. I feel like an idiot. I feel like, why did I tell people? Why, like, all of this stuff, like, I've got a picture that when you post this out, I'm going to post that where we was at my sister's 25th birthday and he was kissing the bump. And I've never posted it before, but and bless Nick as well, because the men go through it as well. I don't think the men have to obviously look after you, and they've still lost a baby, they've still seen the heartbeat, they've still been to all of the appointments. And here in the UK right now, men can't go into the appointment. Can you imagine finding out that news without Gareth?
No, do you know what, I've been thinking about that a lot, because obviously I'm here in Dubai and we went through fertility treatment for this pregnancy. So I had a pregnancy in January where I found out I was pregnant. I didn't tell anyone, and at 5 weeks pregnant, I bled. So it's technically called a chemical pregnancy because even though it's implanted, it's not long enough to get to a 6-week scan or whatever. But I still had all of that like feeling, and that was after fertility treatment in the January. And then we did 3 failed rounds and then this round. And because the pregnancy was through fertility treatment, a bit like you have to go for that early scan, but I had to go for blood tests every 2 days, scans weekly, all the way up to 10 weeks. So my pregnancy was monitored so closely because of the miscarriage before, and also because of the drugs that I was still taking to support the pregnancy and the fertility treatment. And I just said to Gareth, I said, I really feel for the parents in the UK at the moment, because I couldn't imagine it. Like, scanxiety is like a real thing, right?
Mm,
And the more I
really?
speak to other women, the more real I realise it is. Especially when you've had a high risk pregnancy or you've had loss before and you're being closer observed, which is great, but at the same time the anxiety around every scan is, you don't, for me, I didn't go into the scan like, yeah, I'm going to have a scan. I was like, oh my god, I hope everything is okay every single time. And I said, I can't imagine having to do this alone. And I certainly can't imagine being at that, my NT scan where they do the fluid on the baby, which is when we found out that the baby was poorly. I couldn't imagine being in that scan on my own. And I just, my heart goes out to anybody that's in this space at the moment, because the challenges, it just makes everything so much harder. And pregnancy, even a straightforward pregnancy, and I hate to say that because I don't think any pregnancy is straightforward actually, because every woman really goes through it. You've got hormones kicking in, it's hard. Every pregnancy, some might be easier than others, but I believe every pregnancy has its challenges. So I don't believe that there's a straightforward pregnancy, because I think every woman feels it, right? You go through the mill. And to do any of it without your partner there, it must be really hard. And also for the dads, they're all like, they don't get to carry the pregnancy. So these appointments are like real opportunities for connection, for connecting to the pregnancy and the baby. And I just feel like people are really being robbed of that right now.
Yeah, I don't understand why the government are allowing you to go to a one-on-one appointment with a personal trainer, but you're not allowed to take your partner into a scan.
For their child.
I don't get that whatsoever. But
I'm with you. I don't understand it. And it's just, I hope it changes soon for everybody. So yeah, sorry, going back to your situation. So then talk me through, so that picture, you said that you felt stupid for telling people.
Yeah, and I think that's why people, women, decide to be secretive around it.
Yeah.
That's where I think it stems from, because of the pain. I think that women find it difficult to open up when, that's why it's like a big secret until you're 12 weeks. And that's how we decided to move forward with it with Arabella. I decided not to tell anyone because of the pain that I felt.
Yeah.
And also people, obviously, that didn't know that I'd lost a baby, asking me how the pregnancy was going. And I'm sure that you're going to experience that. And yeah, every time I had to explain, it brought it back. And I was really traumatized around it. And I think that the trauma came from going to the scan, just thinking that everything was going. I was having every symptom, you know, and like you, you know, I wasn't prepared. I was not prepared. I actually think I was so naive to think, before that happened to me, that scans were just to see the baby kicking around on the screen and not to do any of these checks. And I think I was quite naive. I think lots of women are quite naive. They just think, yay, I'm going to see my baby. And not thinking what's behind that. Yeah. And because Riley was so straightforward, from what I can remember, as you said, you know, I had its own challenges, like nausea and things like that, but pretty straightforward, and vaginal birth. So yeah, I didn't think about it, and I didn't realize that it was so common. And it's only when women like me and you stand up and say, I've lost a baby, that other people, so many women, will say, I lost a baby. Yeah. But women, friends that I'd known for years, turned around and said to me, oh yeah, I've lost 2 babies. I'm like, well, how the hell have you never told me this?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I found, obviously, as you know, I was really open about my fertility journey and getting pregnant, because for me, I didn't tell anyone that I was starting fertility treatment at the end of last year. And then I got pregnant and had that very early loss. And everyone's different, but for me, for my mental health, I just couldn't pretend that I was okay. And so for me, the only way to move forward with it was to like blow the lid on it and like just start sharing that we were going through this. I don't think I started sharing until after I'd had the pregnancy loss, and then I had a failed fertility round. So I was 2 rounds in, and I started sharing from the 3rd round, which didn't work. 4th round didn't work. 5th round, just got pregnant this time. And for me, it was helpful. So I just believe that everyone should do what helps them. And if you feel that not speaking is damaging your mental and emotional health in some way, then speak. And I just think everyone should be free to do what they do with no time constraints either way. Just whatever helps you get through and process, do that, like do you. And for me, I just found it helpful to just be like, you know, totally open. Everyone around me knew, and I'm like, yep, going through a cycle now. And then if it didn't work, I was given grace, I was given space, and people are like, do you know what, just take a day, like just last round didn't work and it sucks, and you know, and it just helped me feel freer with what we were.
I admire that. I admired watching the journey, but there's just that little part of me that was like, oh, I just hope that this is not gonna end badly. And that's, I think my heart broke with you. And obviously so many people that were, you know, thousands of people that are watching you, and that's just real. But that is what you're doing is amazing. It is so amazing. I wanted to give some tips on what I found really useful when I was going through it all, to move past it. And also just wanted to obviously talk about, now that's what I do for work. So I'm not working at the moment. I've had a baby, and I'm on maternity leave, but when I go back, my career's pivoted. I want to really focus and home in on helping people pre and postnatal. So I've been on the whole journey, as have you. One of my top tips is you are grieving, so allow yourself to grieve. And what really, really was beautiful for me and Nick, something that we did together, is we went and bought a rose bush from our local gardening centre, and we gave our baby a name, Evie May, and we felt that it was a girl spirit, and we have got it in our back garden. That's one of the things that we did together, and we both wrote her a letter to say goodbye. I think that that's a really lovely ritual to do, and I believe that every woman, when you've carried a child, every baby is a miracle, whether they make it here or not. And it is my belief that it isn't over. Their spirit is still wanting to come to you. Their soul has chosen you as their mum, and they will find their way to you. And that has been my experience. I do believe that Arabella's soul, she was waiting to come down. 2020, the year, she's going to be a very spiritual young lady. She's very strong-willed already. I think she's going to have to be in the new world we're living in.
I know.
Hypnotherapy is what desensitized me to the PTSD. And what did you call it?
Scanxiety. Like anxiety. Like anxiety, but scanxiety.
That is 100% a real thing.
It's super real. Like I've had so many women that I've connected with. And yeah, scan anxiety is a real deal when you are a mama that has had loss or gone through fertility treatment and loads of failed fertility rounds. The feelings that are being shared with me, everyone's experiencing that same thing, because they don't hop, skip and jump into a scan.
No.
They're going into that scan holding their breath, going, please just tell me everything's okay, please just tell me everything's okay.
Praying. Yeah.
Wishing, hoping with every ounce of their being, please just tell me everything's okay. And that was, for me, that was, every scan that we had was, and because at some point we were getting scanned twice a week, especially when I started spot bleeding at 9 to 10 weeks. We then went in twice in that week for a scan. And yeah, I mean, you just go in just saying, please just tell me that there's still a heartbeat. Please just tell me that the baby's still there, that it's not, a blighted ovum that I've discovered is a thing that people tend to find out, that they go for their dating scan and their body thinks they're pregnant and the ovum's blighted, but because everything else has started to form around it, there's no actual baby inside, but their body thinks they're pregnant. It's a real thing, and like this miscarriage is just, your body doesn't know that your baby's heartbeat stopped. Your body doesn't know that. And I've spoken to so many women and they're pregnant, right? These women, they're not making it up. This isn't, they're truly pregnant, and they go in and get this awful news. And I don't know what that feels like, because that wasn't my story exactly, but it's real, and this is happening to people, and people don't talk about it. And they do feel, what I have learned from other women sharing their stories with me is that people are filled with this feeling of, I'm stupid, or some shame on some level, or something that's like a negative against themselves. And I just feel heartbroken that that's the truth, because there's no shame in this and there is no fault in this. It's cruel, it's shitty, it's horrid, it's heartbreaking, and it shouldn't be anything that anyone has to go through at 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 20 weeks, 28 weeks, 36 weeks.
Yeah.
By sharing this so openly, I've had so many women share their stories with me at all variants of stages of pregnancy. And a big theme, like you've shared with me, is that they go away feeling stupid for being excited about their pregnancy. They feel stupid for sharing. They feel some shame on some level. And it breaks my heart, because it's just not fair. It's not a burden that any woman should have to carry, because when you do get pregnant, you should feel excited.
Yeah.
And you should be allowed to experience joy and all of those things. And fear is just an awful thing, but fear comes from the reality of loss and the reality of the sad parts of life that are. And we can't deny that, right? So we're cautious, because as humans, we don't want to get hurt. We try and protect ourselves. But I just feel sad. I feel sad that it robs people of that joy, and that you like I did. I had every right to feel happy at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, when I went into my scan and they told me my baby was okay. I had every right to feel happy that day,
Yeah.
And it's just sad, isn't it, that these experiences then rob us of that joy, or we feel stupid for having that joy. And it saddens me that it's so,
Yeah.
And how did you feel? So obviously you've gone through your first loss, which I know you say you didn't plan for, didn't know about, but you had like nanoseconds to process that before it became your reality, right? And it makes sense to me that it's massive. It is massive, that it doesn't matter whether you planned for it or not. In actual fact, the fact you didn't plan for it and you didn't know about it almost makes it heavier, because it all just happened to you like a ton of bricks in like minutes. And it's huge. It's a huge thing to process. And then you've obviously gone through this second pregnancy, and like you said, you took your son, and that was supposed to be a really happy day. And another, like, it's a shock, it's shocking, right? It's just nothing you'd ever believe would happen, especially because you had your 6-week scan. It's reassuring. A lot of people don't get their scan, I know in the UK especially, till later. But similarly to me, I had lots of early scans that were all reassuring: growth, heartbeat, all of that. So you sort of go in armed with that, because you've had a first look, right? And then it's just like you've had to deal with that all over again. And you chose to have the surgical option, and I chose to fly back to the UK and be asleep when that happened for me. Everyone has to be connected with a charity called ARC, and there's a bit on their website, and it says you will choose the option that seems the least worst. And I thought, do you know what? That's exactly it, because there is no good option when you're faced with news like that, like you were. Your baby is inside you still, but the pregnancy is not going to continue. Something physical has to happen, right? That the baby and the pregnancy has to come out of you. And no, there's no nice option on the table. And it's not spoken about enough. And the way that charity sums it up by saying you will know what's right for you because you will choose the least worst option that feels the least worst to you. And I thought that's exactly right, because there is no good option. There's nothing that feels okay in this moment. It all feels terrible. So you just have to choose the one that feels the least worst. But it's accurate. It was an accurate description. So you then, after that, your body needs some time, your mind needs some time, your heart needs some time. How did you move through that afterwards and process that to then go on to be pregnant with your lovely, beautiful little girl now, Arabella?
So after that, I just struggled for quite a long time, on a physical level as well, because I was looking 12 weeks pregnant, and I had to deal with the fact that I was chubby and I didn't have anything to show for it.
Oh God, do you know how many times I've said that word, that exact thing, this last week and a bit? All this, exactly that, all this, and I've got nothing. There's nothing. Not I've got nothing like a possession, but there's nothing to show. All of this.
Yes,
I hear you.
And I actually I was going to the gym. I took a little bit of time out of the gym. I love to work out anyway. I didn't feel great. I just felt all the hormones are still going on. If you do a pregnancy test, like up to a week later, you still say you're pregnant. Your body thinks that you're pregnant. And actually, the doctors kindly texted me 2 weeks later saying, "Can you please take a pregnancy test?" I was like, "Why?" Thanks. I really don't want to. And then I think that was after my ectopic, actually, because my boss at the time was like, why are you getting so upset, Laura, about this?
Oh.
I was at my desk. It's just something you have to do. It's just a process. That's what she said to me.
I'm so sorry.
And yeah, so I remember going to the gym. The girl I train with now, she's obviously, at the moment we're in a lockdown in the UK, but she was coming to my house after I've had Arabella, and the first time I ever met her was in the gym near my house, Virgin. And I went into her office and I was like, oh, I just lost a baby. and I just want to lose the weight, and just burst into tears in her office. And I was just like, I'm so sorry. She's like, do not be sorry.
Yeah.
And was so lovely, and she is a lovely girl. And yeah, just remember just feeling really lost. And it wasn't until I went on my cousin's hen do and I really surrounded myself with women, and just really let my hair down and got it all out, that I started to process. And what I did to really move on from it is I really grounded myself into work. And I threw myself into work, and I started to organise a online, well, it was online in the end, but you were one of the speakers, the Healing Fest.
Okay.
So I threw myself into that. And I just put getting pregnant on the back burner. I just didn't want to put myself through that for a while again.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's the one thing that I realise isn't spoken about enough, and thank you for sharing your experience of this. I was hoping that you would, is because I'm realising that when a loss happens, the bit that's not spoken about the loss isn't spoken about nearly as much as it needs to be, but the reality of what actually you have to go through isn't spoken about like anywhere. And the fact that what you just said, my body was still 12 weeks pregnant. I'm still dealing with the fact that I have pregnant boobs that are tender, that are veiny, that are big, that I can't wear a normal bra. I still have a tummy. I still got pain in my hips from where my hips were starting to expand, which I've also learned people that carry Edwards babies get bigger quicker, and it might be because of all the excess fluid and that. So, but you're learning all this stuff, but the reality is my body hasn't got the memo yet.
Yeah.
And I'm just thank you for sharing that, because I feel really passionately that the one thing you need when you go through something like this is information. And as hard as that information is, to someone to be sort of real with you about what might come your way, because otherwise it just feels like blow after blow after blow. And I've been very lucky. I've had a couple of women who've messaged me saying, now I don't want to upset, they've gone through it themselves, they're like, I don't want to upset you, but basically your body might not get the memo straight away, and this is what you might expect. And yeah, okay, it was hard to hear, but I'm also grateful for the heads up, because they're things you just don't even think about, like especially when you're going through a loss that you weren't prepared for, nobody's prepared for. You don't think about all these other things that are going to physically affect you after the baby's not in you anymore.
Yeah. I think another thing as well, what's really important to talk about is, and I'm sure that you and Gareth have experienced this, and I have asked Nick if it's okay to talk about this, is that, after you've lost a baby and then you're trying for a baby again, it is the most unsexy experience because you are, especially if you get obsessive around it like I did. I can be quite an addictive person. So once I get something into my head, I just need it to happen. And now, like yesterday. So, so I was on all the apps, I was tracking everything, and I would be like, right, I'm ovulating, we need to have sex. And he would just be like, whoa. Slow down, lady. Of course I want to have sex with you, but you're really taking the fun and joy out of it, babe. And that happens to so many women. I've spoken to a lot of women about that, and it's not going to happen when you're like that, because your body's like this, tight, and you need to be chilled out, and you need to be in all the good, happy hormones. Obviously, with IVF, it is very different. But again, for it to work, you have to be in a good, your body needs to be relaxed. And it's when I ditched all of the apps and I let go, and I actually, I again, I track my cycles with the moon now, and that's fine, but I ditched all of the apps and I just went with the flow. And I said, you know what? God, universe, whatever you want to call it, whatever sits comfortably with you. You know what? You give me a baby when you think it's right. I let go. I'm going to let go. I'm going to enjoy my life. Me and Nick have got a fabulous relationship. If we have a baby, great. If we don't, great. And that's what mindset I went with. And we had a great time. I got engaged. And yeah, and I was right in the middle of organising the Healing Fest, and then I found out I was pregnant. I was like, really? Now? You are a comedian, aren't you?
Oh, what a lovely year in the end for you guys, this year. I've loved watching your story unravel with Nick, and yeah, it just fills my heart up watching you guys go through and build your little life together with Riley and your little girl. And I'm just over the moon for you, and really grateful that you've come on today to share your story and answer such upsetting questions, right? There's no other way to put them, so I'm just grateful that you've been willing to come and talk about these things, because I know firsthand, as you do, that I have found enormous comfort, not in the fact that others have walked this path and had this pain and had this sadness, but enormous comfort to know that I haven't walked this path alone, and that other women have been so amazing to share their experience with me. And it's brought me so much comfort and so much hope, and stopped me feeling alone. So, do this today. I just hope that we give that to somebody else.
Yeah. And also something that we discussed before we started recording was, I think for women that haven't experienced it, or they know somebody that's experiencing it right now, they've got a friend that's lost a baby, the best thing that one of my friends said to me after I'd lost a baby was, I'm here if you need to talk about it. I'm here, but I'm not going to talk about it unless you want to talk about it. And she was there. And I think I said I was really sad because a lot of my friends that either were pregnant or just had a baby distanced themselves from me because they didn't know what to say. And that really made me feel sad, but I understand it. I think the best thing that you can say to a friend or somebody that you know has been through it is just say, what do you need?
Yes. Yeah. I think any statement that starts with at least ... and you can fill it in with anything you want is basically unhelpful. So anybody that starts something well at least ... statement of choice, because that's all they are. They're statements. They're not compassionate, or it's someone trying to put something in to fix a situation. Anything that starts with oh well, or well at least ... is basically just a no-go, because what I'm realizing is it's someone's opinion on your situation, and it's not connecting, it's not compassionate, it's not empathetic, or it's your view on someone else's situation. And the minute you start doing that, you lose the ability and the opportunity to connect with that person and meet them where they are. Your one that you said, what do you need, is probably the number one perfect thing that you could say, because everybody's needs are so different. Some people don't want to talk about it, some people do want to talk about it. And by saying, what is it you need? And even acknowledging, like I've had a couple of people say, I have no idea what to say or how to help you. What do you need? What can I do? Is almost better than trying to assume you know what to say. Because you're actually meeting that person and being honest, like, I don't know what to do here, but I'm here. What do you need? What can I do? And that's actually, I think, would solve lots of clumsy blunders.
Yeah, even though it's from the best intentions, isn't it? From the best intentions, people can say, people feel like they need to fix. So again, it's from a good place.
Of course.
It's unhelpful. Yeah.
The problem with it is it feels heavy to the person that's already carrying quite a lot of weight. So yeah, I think if you don't know what to say, or you've not experienced anything like that before, where you can have like that kind of relational connection on what a commonality, then just to acknowledge that you don't know what to say, but you're here, and what do you need, can be far more comforting and loving than you realize, I think, than anybody realizes. It's quite powerful because it's honest, but loving at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So where can we find you?
Okay, so at the moment I'm on maternity leave with my beautiful daughter Arabella Rose, who is coming up for 5 months old. I don't know when I'm coming back to work. This is kind of my first debut step, dipping my toe back into the water. Yes, you can find me on thehealingrooms.co.uk, or you can find me at Laura_Beddoe_spiritual_coach. Or you can find me on Facebook, The Healing Rooms /Sussex.
Lovely. Thank you for coming on today and having this conversation with me, and holding space for me at the same time. So yeah, Laura Beddoe, everybody, and thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me on, my darling. And yeah, you are so brave, and you are going to help so many women, and you are just an amazing person, just a bubble of light. So I will look forward to seeing you when you come to England next time, on a better occasion, I hope.
A happier occasion, yeah.
Yeah.